All right, so now we're going to talk about factoring trinomials using the AC method. And again, this is when we're factoring trinomials in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, where a does not equal 1. Also, a doesn't equal 0 either. So after factoring out the GCF, we'll multiply the coefficients of the first and last term. So a times c. That's where the AC comes from. So whatever this number is here in front of the x squared, I'm going to multiply with that c, and that's going to be my product. Then I want to find two integers whose product is AC and whose sum is b. If no pair of integers is found, then the trinomial cannot be factored and said to be prime. Rewrite the middle term bx so it's the sum of the two terms whose coefficients are the integers found in step 2. We then factor by grouping, and then we can always go and FOIL our answer to verify we get the original trinomial. So let's turn the page. And they're going to first walk us through an example. So factoring. So again, here notice the coefficient of the square term is not 1. So this is why I have to do this alternate technique. I'm going to do 6 times the negative 10 is negative 60, a times c. Then I list out my pairs of factors of 60. So negative 60. And so negative 60 times 1 or 60 times negative 1. Actually, I would just go ahead and list just this column, but this is the way the book does it. So we kind of keep going through the pairs, and we're adding each time, trying to find one that adds to 11. It's not until we get down to 15 plus negative 4 that have a sum of 11. So here's where it's different. We can't just write x plus 15 and x minus 4 because the coefficient of square term is not 1. What I need to do is I need to rewrite that 11x as a negative 15x minus 4x. So it's kind of like you're doing the FOILing backwards. Like when we FOILed, if we can find one that we FOILed here back. When you go FOIL, you first did the FOIL and then you combine the middle terms. So think of this as first uncombine the middle terms, so writing that step backwards. And then you do your factor by grouping. So you say the first two terms here have a factor of 3x. Last two terms have a factor of 2. Since the 4 is negative, we factor out negative 2. And then our two pieces have that 2x plus 1. That gives us where we need to be. So let's take a look at some problems. And so we're going to factor this using the AC method. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this 12 and this negative 5. And I'm going to do a times c. 12 times the negative 5 is negative 60. So it looks a lot like what we did just up there. We're going to do it differently, though, a little bit differently. So I'm looking at this negative 60. In fact, let me make it a little bit easier. Let me write it down here. So now here I'm going to start listing the factors of negative 60. Now, I want that middle term to be negative, so I need to make the larger factor negative. So if I do 1 times the negative 60, that gives me negative 59. That doesn't work. 2 times the negative 30. No, it's negative 28. It's not where I need to be. 3 times the negative 20. Oh, there we go. That adds up to negative 17. Now here's where it's different. I bring down the 12x squared. That middle term, that negative 17x, I'm going to replace with a plus 3x minus 20x. And then just bring down the minus 5. So then we do our grouping. I look at the first two terms. They have a common factor of 3x. And let me use pink here. My leftover is going to be 4x. 3x divided by 3x is 1, so I'm going to put a plus 1. Looking at the last two terms, they have a common factor of 5, but that's a negative, so I want to take out a negative 5. My leftovers are 4x plus 1. And now I look at my two pieces. They have a 4x plus 1. I'm going to put that out in front. And my leftovers are 3x minus 5. Now I can verify this. If I take the product of the first terms, that's 12x squared. Outer is negative 20x. Inner is 3x. That adds up to negative 17x. And last would be a negative 5. So just by foiling real quick, I can verify I got the correct answer. Let's try the next one. Let's do 8 times 1 is 8. So I'm going to do my AC method here. So I got to break down factors of 8, find the pair that add up to 6. So 1 times 8, that's 9. 2 times 4, bingo. There's my pair of factors. So when I bring this down, I'm going to write 8x squared. I'm going to rewrite that middle term as a plus 2x plus 4x and then a plus 1. Now you might be asking, well, does it matter if I put the 2x first and then the 4x, or can I put the 4x and then the 2x? And the answer is no, it does not matter. You can put them in either order. When you do your factoring by grouping, it's still all going to work out. So if I look at the first two terms, they have a common factor of 2x. So I'm going to factor that out. My leftovers are going to be 4x plus 1. Okay, we've seen that before. That's weird. I assume it's just a coincidence. Here, we have no common factor except for 1, but I'm going to still write that 1. So I'm going to write that as plus 1, and then 4x plus 1. You'll see why in a minute. And the reason I want to write that plus 1 is now when I do my next step, I can pull that 4x plus 1 out in front. My leftovers, and I have 2x. Now I know what to write here. I need to write my 1 here. And so that will give me my answer. Let's try number 19. So again, I'm going to be doing my AC method. 6 times a negative 7, that's a negative 42. See if I can write that a little bit clearer. In fact, let me just write it underneath. Okay, so we got to find a pair of factors of negative 42 that add up to negative 11. 11's negative, so I want the larger factor to be negative. 1 times a negative 42. That's negative 41. 2 times a negative 21. That's 19. 3 times a negative 14. Ah, there it is. That's the pair of factors we want. So we're going to rewrite this as 6x squared. And rewrite that middle term as a plus 3x minus 14x. and then do our factor by grouping. So if I look at the first two terms, they have a common factor of 3x. My leftovers are going to be 2x plus 1. And then looking at the last two terms, they have a common factor of 7. Since that 14 is negative, I want to take out a negative 7. Gives me 2x plus 1. And then I'm going to pull that 2x plus 1 out in front. My leftovers are 3x minus 7. So let's try this next one. Now, if I were to take 24 times a negative 16, I get negative 384. That's an awfully large number to go through all the factors of that. But ask yourself, what should I always be doing first whenever I see a factoring problem? I need to factor out the greatest common factor. So if I take a look at this problem and I ask myself, what's the greatest common factor? Well, I can factor out a 4. My GCF is 4. Let's factor that out first. So that'd be 6x squared plus 5x minus 4. So now, when I do my AC method, I'm looking at 6 times a negative 4. Well, that gives me a negative 24. That is a heck of a lot better to break down negative 24 than negative 384. So you can see how much time, how much Tylenol or Advil it will save you by factoring out the greatest common factor first. Or I guess Aleve too, if you all use Aleve or aspirin. So whatever your favorite painkiller is. Okay, because now this is much more manageable. So my 5's positive, so I want the larger factor to be positive. So negative 1 times 24, negative 23. Negative 2 times 12 is 10. Negative 3 times 8, that's 5. That's the combination we want. So this 4 just carries down. I'm going to rewrite that middle term using a minus 3x plus 8x. And now we're ready to do our factor by grouping. Again, this 4 is just hanging out. It's waiting until you get done. And you need to make sure you include that 4 in the answer. So, greatest common factor here is a 3x, so we're going to factor that out. That gives me 2x minus 1. Greatest common factor here is 4. Gives me 2x minus 1. And now my two pieces have that 2x minus 1. And my leftovers are the 3x plus 4. And then make sure you include the 4. That's part of the answer. Let's try this next one. Well, no greatest common factor numbers, but I do have a greatest common factor of x. So let's factor that out. In fact, let's just do it this way. I'm going to use square brackets. So that gives us 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. 2 times a negative 3 is a negative 6. So my two numbers have to have opposite sign. Since the middle term is negative, I want the larger one to be negative. So I'm going to do 1 times negative 6. And right off the bat this time, I got the combination I need. We'll take that freebie. Take that anytime. So, again, this x is still part of the problem. So I'm going to replace the negative 5x with plus x minus 6x. And then we're going to do our grouping. So the first two terms have a common factor of x. So I'm going to put that out in front. And I got my colors messed up, but that's okay. That gives me a 2x plus 1. Last two terms have a common factor of 3, but we want to take out a negative since that 6 is negative. That gives me 2x plus 1. And now my two pieces have the 2x plus 1 in common. So I'm going to bring that out in front. My leftovers are x minus 3. Now if I wanted to check this, I would FOIL this out first. After I get that answer, which should give me that, then I would distribute the x. All right, let's take a look at the next one. All right, no greatest common factor here. All right, so we just have to work with it. We're going to do 4 times negative 25 is a negative 100. I need a negative 15, so I want the larger number to be negative. So if we add those up, that's a negative 99, 2, and negative 50 is 48. 3 doesn't go, 4 and negative 25 is negative 21. 5 and negative 20, that's negative 14. Oh, so that's negative 15, so that's the combination we want. So now I'm going to rewrite that middle term using those numbers there. Looking at my first two terms, I have a common factor of x, so I'm going to factor that out. That gives me a 4x plus 5. And the last two terms have a common factor of 5, but I'll pull out a negative 5. We have 4x plus 5. And now my two pieces have that 4x plus 5 in common. I put that on front. My leftovers here are going to be x minus 5.